In the heart of southern France, beneath the crumbling stones of St. Bernadette's Church, silence had long kept its secrets. For centuries, villagers whispered that the earth below the altar was cursed, that a passage led not to catacombs, but to something older, something waiting. When Father Lucien Duray ordered the excavation to restore the church's foundation, he expected nothing more than dust and relics. Yet as the first shovels struck stone, the air grew colder. The workers' laughter dipped. Then came the sound, hollow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat trapped beneath the earth. Lucien's candle trembled in his grasp as the ground gave way, revealing a chamber untouched by light for perhaps 1,000 years. The air smelled of myrrh and blood. He looked down, and whatever he saw there, it drained the color from his face and stole his voice forever. By morning, the church was sealed. Father Lucien refused to explain. The mayor's man, uneasy but obedient, boarded the doors and marked the threshold with red chalk, a sign of quarantine. Yet, word spread through the village. Children whispered that the priest had found the remains of a saint, but the elders, the ones who still remembered the plague of 1623, crossed themselves and spoke no further. Lucien locked himself in the rectory, writing letters in a trembling hand that he never sent. At night, the candles in the church relit themselves, glowing faintly through the cracks of the boarded windows. And in the stillness before dawn, villagers swore they heard a voice, not praying, not human, but chanting from beneath the stone floor. 3 nights later, archaeologist Dr. Clara Renou arrived from Lyon, summoned by Lucien's final message, a single line scrawled in Latin. Custodite sub altar quod. Dormivit. Guard beneath the altar what has slept. Clara carried with her the detachment of science and the exhaustion of one who had long ceased believing in miracles. Yet the moment she entered the nave, that composure fractured. The air shimmered, the boards on the floor seemed to breathe. Her instruments failed, their screens turning black. She knelt near the excavation site, tracing the symbols along the pit's edge. The marks pulsed faintly beneath her fingertips, as though remembering her touch from another lifetime. When the seal was broken a second time, no sound came. Only a rush of air that carried with it the scent of rain and decay. Clara and Lucien lowered a camera into the pit, its light cutting through centuries of darkness. The feed flickered, revealing the mask again, but now it was turned upward, facing them. The resin on the coffin's edge had melted away, as if from within. Lucien whispered a prayer that faltered midway, his voice cracking. Something whispered back. It spoke not through the air, but through vibration, through the stone itself. Clara looked at the monitor and saw her own name carved freshly into the ancient wall. By dawn, the church stood silent once more. Lucien had vanished. Only his rosary remained, coiled near the altar like a serpent in waiting. Clara sealed the pit herself, whispering apologies into the earth as she did. Yet when she turned to leave, she noticed something impossible. The cross above the altar, once wooden and worn, now shimmered as though cast from molten silver. Beneath its glow, faint footprints led toward the rectory door, and then stopped abruptly, as if the one who made them had simply ceased to exist. Outside, the bells tolled, though no hand pulled their ropes. The village awoke to the sound of bells echoing from the sealed church. Slow, deliberate tolls that carried across the valley. No one dared approach. By noon, the mayor had called for the gendarmerie, and Father Lucien's disappearance became an official matter. Dr. Clara Renou remained inside the rectory, her hands trembling as she reviewed the footage again and again. Each playback grew shorter, corrupted, as if something beneath the church was learning, rewriting itself through her technology. On the 4th replay, the frame froze on the silver mask. Then a new line of text appeared beneath it, not carved but pixelated, like a message sent through time. Tu n'as pas refermé la porte. You did not close the door. By dusk, 2 officers arrived, Captain Henri Leclerc and his junior partner Émile Roux. They found the church cold, the boards intact, the air unnaturally still. Henri, A skeptic hardened by 20 years of service dismissed the villagers' fears. But as they descended the nave, both men stopped. The air vibrated faintly, like the hum of a buried engine. In the altar's shadow, something gleamed. A single silver feather, impossibly pristine, resting atop the sealed floor. Henri bent to touch it. The instant his fingers made contact, the candles along the walls flared to life, burning with blue flame. The church was awake again. Clara joined the officers inside. Her voice was measured, clinical, yet beneath it trembled guilt. She explained what she had seen. The carvings, the voice, the mask, but not the message. The men listened, their disbelief turning to wary silence. Henri ordered the pit reopened, though Clara protested. When they lifted the boards, the scent of wet iron filled the air. The sarcophagus below was empty. In its place lay a thin layer of fine white ash, shaped like a body, and pressed into its chest was Father Lucien's rosary. Clara whispered that the ash was still warm. Henri, trying to mask his fear, muttered that it was only decomposition. But Emile stepped closer and saw the ash begin to rise. As if breathing, the ash began to drift upward, defying gravity. Tiny motes hung in the air like fireflies, each reflecting the blue of the candles. Clara backed away, choking on the metallic scent that now filled the nave. The ash gathered in the air above the pit, forming the faint outline of a human figure, Lucien's unmistakable in posture. His mouth opened, though no sound came. Henri raised his weapon, but Emile grabbed his arm. Too late, the apparition turned its hollow gaze toward them. Every candle in the church extinguished at once, plunging them into blackness. When light returned a moment later, the figure was gone. Only a single word was etched into the floor. Regardez. Look. Outside, thunder rolled through the valley. The church bells swung on their own, tolling faster now, as if in warning. Clara collapsed onto the nearest pew, staring at the message burned into the stone. Henri demanded answers she couldn't give. Emile, pale and shaking, whispered that they should leave. But as he turned toward the door, the great wooden entrance sealed itself shut with a sound like splintering bone. The wind died. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by the faint sound of weeping, coming not from any of them, but from beneath the altar once more. Clara looked to Henri, then to the sealed pit. "He's still down there," she said softly. "And he's not alone." At dawn, a storm swept across the valley, tearing branches from the ancient oaks surrounding St. Bernadette's church. The village slept fitfully, dreaming of bells and whispered Latin prayers. Inside, Clara, Henri, and Emile had not closed their eyes. They sat huddled in the nave, the silver feather resting between them like a relic and a curse. Clara spoke of an old document, an ecclesiastical decree from 1452, describing an angel bound beneath a church for the preservation of man's ignorance. Henri dismissed it as superstition, but Emile, voice shaking, said he had seen wings in the ashes. Clara didn't reply, her gaze fixed on the altar, where cracks now pulsed faintly with light, as if the stone were breathing, or something beneath it were preparing to rise again. The cracks widened. A low hum vibrated through the air, deep and resonant, shaking dust from the rafters. Clara whispered that the chamber below was collapsing, or awakening. Henri barked orders to seal the area, but Emile, drawn by something unseen, stepped forward and pressed his ear against the altar stone. His eyes rolled white, and his voice began to echo, layered, multiplied, speaking words that were not his. Clara grabbed him, shaking his shoulders, but the voice continued from both his mouth and beneath the earth. Then came the phrase again, distorted yet clear. "You did not close the door." The light burst outward in a sudden wave, knocking them all to the ground. When the light subsided, Emile lay motionless. Clara leaned close. He was breathing, but shallow, whispering fragments of Latin too faint to decipher. The floor had changed. The fissures now formed a perfect circle, surrounding the altar like a seal. In its center, etched in molten silver, was a single symbol, a wing split in two. Henri, trembling, touched it with his boot. Instantly, the church bells began to toll once more, though the ropes hung still. Clara realized then that each sound of the bell was not an echo but a heartbeat, and that it was coming from below them. She turned to Henri, voice barely audible. "He's waking up." Outside, lightning struck the bell tower, shattering the topmost cross. The impact echoed like a scream through the valley. Inside, the walls of St. Bernadette's began to weep, water seeping from the stone as though the church itself mourned. Clara knelt by Emile, whispering prayers between sobs. Henri moved toward the main doors, determined to break them open, but the wood had fused to the frame. In frustration, he fired his weapon. The bullets vanished midair, swallowed by invisible resistance. Then from beneath the altar a sound rose, the first inhale of something ancient tasting freedom. The silver feather lifted from the floor and drifted upward, slowly turning in the still air like a falling snowflake in reverse. Then the bell tower fell silent. Every sound died, leaving only breath, human and otherwise. The feather descended once more, landing before the altar, its glow fading to gray. Henri lowered his weapon, eyes glassy. Clara approached the altar, her steps hesitant. Beneath the cracked stone, the light was gone, replaced by something black and glistening, moving in slow, deliberate ripples. It was not liquid nor shadow, something in between. As she watched, a hand pressed upward from beneath the surface, pale as moonlight, fingers stretching as if reaching for salvation. Clara stumbled back, whispering, "It's not him." The hand clenched once and pulled itself through. The hand did not stop at the wrist. With an agonizing slowness, the figure began to rise from beneath the altar, not climbing, but being drawn upward as though gravity had been reversed. Clara fell to her knees, unable to look away. Henri shouted her name, his voice echoing against the stone walls, but the sound seemed to fade before reaching her. The figure's head emerged last, a silver mask, identical to the one found in the sarcophagus, yet now pulsing faintly with inner light. Behind it trailed wings, torn and incomplete, their feathers charred black at the tips. The figure stood, trembling, every movement deliberate, almost reverent. Then it spoke, its voice layered, human and inhuman, whispering, "I was not meant to wake." The thing that had been buried for centuries opened its eyes, twin spheres of molten light, reflecting the trembling candles around it. Clara reached out despite herself, whispering a prayer half remembered from childhood. The figure regarded her, tilting its head as if studying something fragile. "You are her echo," it murmured. The words struck her like a blow. Henri shouted again, demanding to know what it was, but the creature's gaze fell upon him next. "Faith without silence is rebellion," it said softly, and every candle in the nave extinguished. For a moment, only the sound of breathing remained. Then a single ember reignited at the figure's feet, burning in the shape of a cross. When the light returned, Emile was gone. Only his flashlight lay near the pit, its beam flickering toward the pews. Clara screamed his name, but her voice fell flat. Henri circled the altar, pistol raised, though he already knew it was useless. The creature turned toward the sound of the bell tower's wind chime, faint, melodic, impossibly gentle amid the tension. One was faith, it whispered. One was doubt. One was silence. Only silence remains. Then, without moving, the figure's reflection appeared in every broken shard of glass around them, each one depicting a different posture, kneeling, praying, screaming. Clara realized with horror that the reflections weren't of the present moment, but of what was about to happen. The reflections moved before the figures did. One by one, they began to mimic actions not yet taken. Clara kneeling, Henri dropping his weapon, the creature extending its hand, then Reality caught up. Clara sank to the ground as if pulled by unseen strings. Henri's gun clattered across the tiles, sliding to rest at the figure's feet. The creature's hand rose slowly, palm open, and a faint radiance spilled from it, illuminating the ceiling fresco. Once blank, now depicting scenes of angels, binding one of their own in chains beneath a cross. Clara whispered, "You were cast down." The figure nodded, its expression unreadable. "No," it replied. "I was buried by those who feared forgiveness." The church began to tremble, not with violence but with resonance. Every stone, every beam vibrating in harmonic unison. Outside, villagers awoke to a blinding column of light rising from the bell tower into the storm clouds. Inside, Clara felt warmth flooding her chest, a memory not her own, of chains breaking and of prayers unanswered, of a promise betrayed. Henri staggered forward, shouting that they had to stop it, but the creature turned to him, and for a moment its voice was purely human. "I did not ask to return," it said. "I asked to be remembered." The light intensified, swallowing every shadow until only the outline of the three remained: man, woman, and fallen angel, suspended in silence before the storm collapsed inward. When the light vanished, all that remained was silence. The storm outside had broken into gentle rain, each drop echoing faintly through the shattered roof. Clara awoke first, lying near the altar where the stone had turned to dust. The creature was gone, as though it had never existed, but the air still shimmered faintly with residual light. Henri stirred beside her, coughing, his coat scorched at the edges. The church around them was transformed, the frescoes restored, the broken pews mended, the air carrying the scent of myrrh and burnt feathers. Clara whispered, "He left something behind." On the floor where the creature had stood lay a single tear-shaped fragment of silver, pulsing gently like a living heart. Clara carried the fragment to the rectory, wrapping it in linen. She dared not touch it with bare skin. Every few seconds it pulsed, resonating faintly like a heartbeat. Henri followed in silence, his disbelief eroded into awe. "Whatever that was," he said hoarsely, "it wasn't human." Clara nodded, eyes distant. "No," she replied. "But it remembered how to be." That night, unable to sleep, she placed the fragment on the wooden table beside her journal. It glowed brighter, casting reflections across the walls. Images she did not recognize. Children playing in a field, a cloister burning, a man kneeling beneath a blood-red moon. Each scene vanished as soon as she blinked. Henri could not stay. By morning, he announced his intention to return to Paris, to file his report and leave the valley behind. Clara didn't argue. She watched him pack, the fragment hidden beneath her coat. "You saw what it was," she said softly. "You can't deny it." Henri paused, his hands trembling as he lit a cigarette. "I saw something," he replied, "but I no longer know what to believe." Before he left, he turned once more toward the church. Its windows now gleamed as if freshly crafted, the air around it unnaturally still. "If faith built this place," he murmured, "then something else built what's beneath it." He never looked back. Left alone, Clara continued her research. She studied the markings she had copied from the pit, comparing them to forbidden texts from the Vatican archives. The symbols spoke not of damnation but of concealment, a divine quarantine. The entity had not been imprisoned for its sins but for its mercy. It had tried to unmake the hierarchy of heaven itself, to let humanity stand unjudged. Clara's hands shook as she realized the implications. She looked toward the silver fragment, now dull and inert. "You didn't fail?" she whispered. "They feared what you offered." As if in response, a single word appeared etched into the surface of her desk. Faint, luminous, and ancient. "Remember." Weeks later, the village returned to calm. Repairs were finished, the church reconsecrated, and the story of that night quietly rewritten by those in power. Officially, Father Lucien had died in an accident. The church's collapse blamed on decay, but those who entered afterwards swore the air still shimmered faintly, and when they prayed, their voices seemed to echo twice, once human, once not. As for Clara, she left without warning. Her apartment in Lyon found empty save for a single journal and a silver feather sealed in glass. In her final entry, she had written only this: it was never buried. It was waiting to be remembered. A month after Clara's disappearance, the parish received a letter sealed with her handwriting but marked with no return address. Inside was a single photograph, an image of a desert monastery somewhere far beyond France. Scrawled beneath it, "It sleeps here too." The Vatican dispatched Father Adrien Morel, an exorcist known for his discretion, to investigate what they now called the Lyon anomaly. He arrived in the village at dusk, finding St. Bernadette's unchanged, yet the air around it heavy, like the pause before confession. That night, he slept within the church. At midnight, he awoke to the bells, tolling again. Soft, deliberate, and this time, calling his name. He knelt before the altar, whispering prayers older than the church itself. The stones were cool beneath his fingers, yet pulsed faintly with warmth, like veins carrying unseen blood. He opened Clara's journal, which he'd found among Vatican records. The last pages contained not words, but sketches, wings, circles, and beneath them, a phrase written repeatedly. The silence remembers. As he traced the ink with his thumb, the candles flickered out, one by one. The air grew dense, pressing in from all sides. Adrien lifted his crucifix. The silence deepened until it roared, and from within that void, something exhaled. The voice that followed was neither male nor female, ancient, layered, and broken. It spoke in fragments of Latin and something older, a sound more felt than heard. Adrian's crucifix grew cold. Adrian's crucifix grew cold. The altar began to glow from beneath again, light seeping through new cracks forming in the floor. A single feather drifted upward, unburned, its edges dripping silver. Adrien fell to his knees, whispering, "In nomine." But the word refused to finish. Then he saw her. Clara, or something wearing her form, stood within the light, her eyes filled with radiance. She looked at him and said gently, "It never left. It's still beneath us." She stepped closer, her voice like distant thunder muffled by centuries. "You came to seal it," she said, "but there is no seal strong enough for memory." Adrien tried to speak the right, but his words faltered. The ground trembled, not with anger, but with awakening. From beneath the altar came a dull glow, pulsing in rhythm with Adrian's heart. "What are you?" he gasped. The apparition smiled faintly, sorrow shadowing her face. "The question is not what, Father," she whispered. "It's why they buried us all." The light flared, consuming her shape, and from that brilliance rose the faint echo of wings. Not one, but many. When the glow receded, dawn had come. The church stood empty, the air still warm from the impossible light. Adrien was gone, only his crucifix remained, fused to the altar, now reshaped into a single silver wing. Outside, villagers gathered once more, drawn by the bells that rang without hands. Far away, in the deserts Clara had photographed, another church bell began to toll, echoing across endless sand. Whatever had slept beneath St. Bernadette's was awake again, not bound to one place but many. And across the world, in every forgotten chapel, the same word began to appear in the dust upon the altars. Remember. Years passed. St. Bernadette's church became a site of silent pilgrimage, though no sermons were held, no prayers sanctioned. People came not to worship, but to listen. To the faint hum that lingered beneath the floor, as if the stones themselves whispered. Scholars called it resonance. The faithful called it remembrance. Among them came a woman in her 60s, weathered, solitary, eyes haunted by memory. It was Clara Renew, changed but unmistakable. She carried no journal now, only a fragment of silver wrapped in cloth. As she knelt before the altar, she whispered, "You kept your promise." The stones trembled softly in reply, and the candles lit themselves once more. That night, the sky over the valley shimmered with a pale aurora, unheard of in southern France. Villagers gathered outside, crossing themselves, murmuring prayers they barely remembered. Inside the church, Clara lay prostrate before the altar, listening. The hum beneath the stones grew louder, shaping itself into rhythm and tone, a melody without origin. She began to weep, realizing the song was not one of triumph or judgment but mourning. The being had not risen to destroy or redeem. It had awakened to grief for what was lost when heaven sealed itself away and man forgot how to listen. In her final hours, Clara wrote a single letter. It was addressed not to the church, nor to any human soul, but to the one beneath the altar. Her handwriting trembled, ink bleeding into the parchment. "You were not a curse," she wrote. "You were the memory of mercy they feared." When she finished, she placed the letter atop the altar and lay beside it. As dawn broke, the bells began to toll once more. Not mournfully this time, but softly, like the heartbeat of the world. When the villagers entered, they found the church empty. Only her letter remained, folded neatly, and beside it, 2 silver feathers crossed in perfect symmetry. The Vatican sealed the site once again, but rumors spread of miracles, of whispers, of unburned candles. Pilgrims still came, leaving behind silver coins, feathers, or scraps of letters to the unknown. Yet no clergy stayed long. All who lingered too near the altar spoke of dreams, vast halls of light where chained angels waited in silence, their eyes fixed on a broken cross that pulsed like a living heart. The faithful began to call the church by another name, L'Église du Silence, the Church of Silence. And some claimed that on nights of thunder, a voice still rose from beneath the stones, whispering, "Remember me." In time, the story faded into myth. Historians debated, scientists dismissed, and theologians reinterpreted. But somewhere beyond France, across deserts and oceans, old churches began to hum the same note, a single low vibration resonating through their foundations. It was faint, constant, alive. Those who listened closely said it wasn't sound at all, but memory, the echo of something divine refusing to be forgotten. And so the world moved on, unaware that beneath its quiet prayers and crumbling altars, the ancient light still waited, not to judge, not to return, but to remind. For even silence remembers.